Hi everyone, it's Tanya MFK here with your 52 Weeks of Momentum lesson recap. We are in week 31. If this is your first time, welcome. I am Tanya Marie Figueres-Kreisinger, more easily known as Tanya MFK, and I am a member of Benjamin Hardy's 52 Weeks of Momentum course, and I come here every week just sharing the lessons that I'm learning and how I'm progressing so you can tag along and get a piece of the momentum. This is in no way a substitute for the course, with the most obvious reason being I'm not Benjamin Hardy. Of course, we have a ton of amazing tools and groups and things that we get verbatim in the course. But if you missed your sign up, tag along here and then make sure to sign up next year. All right. So as I mentioned, we are now in week 31, which we're more than halfway near. We got 5 months left. And this particular lesson was really more so about kind of regrouping us and seeing where we're at and what's in store for us moving forward this year, the rest of the year, right? Because it's not just about this huge, exciting momentum and kind of letting it fall off. And I think a lot of us, we've gotten through that hump, right? That hump was kind of around March, May, June, that middle part of the year where it's really easy to lose it all. Most people have lost it all. And we did a lot of regrouping, a lot of coming back, a lot of reassessing to see where we are. And now we're here. And instead of keeping it kind of a status quo, like let's just keep moving and trucking along, it sounds like it's really about snowballing into that momentum, right? And really getting back and like kind of hitting towards the end of the year with no brakes on. So a lot of what Benjamin Hardy came and was discussing with us was more so about all of this foundation that we've laid. We have learned so much in the last 7 months. We set goals. We got to the bottom of our why and our motivation for these goals. We did visualization and making, let's see what I have there, emotional connections to our goals, right? So there was a whole thing about, it's one thing to just think about where you're going, but when we really make that a practice and become to emotionally connect with what those goals are, our body starts to understand that feeling and wants to keep having it. And we kind of create almost for lack of a better word, I'm going to say almost like an addiction to wanting these good things to happen, wanting to achieve our goals, right? So we're like taking that nuance, that kind of habit that our body can fall into and using it for good, right? So we've learned how to do that. We've learned how to incorporate morning routines, right? That was a huge thing. That's something that most of us should still be doing every day, because the whole idea of a morning routine isn't just to have a couple things to check off your list and say, oh, look at me, I'm doing great things. Like, who cares, right? This is about you. So those morning routines are about the peak state, putting yourself in the peak state, framing yourself, framing your mind, so you are going to do your best at whatever it is for that day, right? Mentally, physically, all of those things, to be, the best go-getter at the office, or to, produce the best work, or have the most clarity, or to create your business you're creating, or to be the best, mom, wife, husband, brother, sister, all of those things, whoever it is, whatever roles that you're living in your life, right? That's what this morning routine is. The morning routine is to set that and create that peak state. So we've learned, and we're continuing to do these amazing morning routines because I'm sure this far in, we've all had an opportunity to see the benefits. We've all had experience what it's really like when we follow that and how good that feels, right? I'm hoping, I'm insinuating that it does. So if you fall off, get back on there. We've also talked about learning how to become accountable, right? That's kind of this whole thing in this group, learning to become accountable, not just to others, but learning to hold ourselves accountable, and also how to track our goals. Different ways and methods. We've had plenty of opportunities to try, and hopefully they've found something that works. So we're tracking our goals. We've read Compound Effect, perhaps once, maybe twice, depending on how close you're following along. Some of us have read it twice, and we've learned the benefits of the compound effect, right? If you haven't read it, Compound Effect, Darren Hardy, go check it out. And all these little things, a lot of times people want to do something big. And again, I always use weight loss as an example. That's a perfect example when people want to go big. So at the beginning of the year, they're like, okay, I'm going to lose this weight. I'm going to work out 7 days a week, and I'm only going to eat this many calories. I'm going to cook every single meal from scratch, and who knows what other things. And they just go full on, and they burn out because it's a lot of change. That is a lot to figure out, right? So the compound effect is explaining kind of in a way, like, what if you were just like, I'm going to change one thing. Like, I'm going to stop eating milkshakes every other week, right? Or maybe it's just going for a short walk, right? Twice a week, right? I'm not saying that these are necessarily the goals you have to do, but here's the thing. A lot of those goals, the smaller goals, the little tiny steps, they're very easy to stick to. They're not as like overwhelming. And when they continue them, they compound over time to actually see long-term results. Because what you do and jump out the gate with the 7 days a week and the blah, 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 it's very noble and great and fantastic. But if you don't stick with that, the guy who's just added walking twice a week is going to have a longer, profound, noticeable effect than what you did for 3 weeks and stopped, right? So that's really the compound effect. So we've learned, we've been learning the value of that, of making the small changes, not letting ourselves get overwhelmed by this big giant thing we think we have to do. I'm not against the big giant things, but again, we've learned if you do that, you need to learn how to build an accountability. Another thing we've learned is about changing our environment for that success, right? That's a huge part of this entire thing, right? Benjamin Hardy's book, Willpower Doesn't Work, kind of what this whole system is based off of, is about changing our environment, right? Setting our environment up to work for us. You know, remember that. That's really the core of where we've set up, is that a lot of people think it's this willpower. If I just do it, if I just stick to it, if I learn all the things in my head, I'll just do it and I'll win. But the reality is not that. The reality is that our environment affects us, and it's super important to make the changes that are needed to set it up in a way that makes us win. And if we find ourselves in a situation that is absolutely killing and against every single thing that we really want to accomplish, then it may be time to make some serious changes to our environment, right? So that was another big part. We talked about using our subconscious. That was a huge one. We talked about our subconscious and learning how to retrain it. Like, whew, that was huge for me. That was a big thing for me. It was one thing to be aware of it, but when I really went in and started like practicing the subconscious and practicing how to retrain it and taking active steps to undo old thinking, that was huge, right? That was huge. So then we had setting environment, talked about that, getting unstuck from old beliefs and frozen personalities, how to set goals beyond what you can do, right? We had a whole, like almost a couple weeks about setting something bigger, right? I mean, it's a real fine line, right? It's not so crazy that you're like, oh, it's unreasonable, but it's not so comfortable that you're like, I definitely can do this. You want to stretch, because it's amazing what we can do when we push that a little further. We also learned about 10X and setting goals that were really bigger, and what 10X thinking does as far as letting all the little stuff fall away. When we set something so big, we stop wasting time on some of the little things because we have our eyes on something big, right? It's really easy to kind of create that priority. So there's a huge benefit to trying to 10X something as opposed to 2X something. So that was a big thing as well. We've also read so many books. I know, you know, I'm like short of breath here. I'm like, oh my God, so much. So we've read so many books. Like I personally, like I've read more books than I ever have in my life, especially in this short amount of time. Totally crazy, totally loving it. And there have been breakthroughs, aha moments, realizations, accomplishments, right? Like I hope this is what your experience has been. The point is here we are now, six, seven months in now. We've come a long way. We have laid a foundation. Like, whew. So what's next? Next is the real transformation. Next is taking all of these things and really experiencing the change, really experiencing the crossover, right? Sounds so, ooh, the crossover. But the crossover, right? Like we've done that, we've learned it, and we've seen these little changes, but you want almost by the end of the year to look back and be like, oh my gosh, like that person I set out to become, I am that person, right? That's what we want to see, that transformation, be like, oh my gosh, I did it, kind of, right? So, it doesn't matter how much we learn if we don't implement it, right? It does not matter how much I was aware of old beliefs until I went in and then actually did something to undo them, right? I was told a long time ago, I was a teenager actually, where teenagers, this may surprise you, but we're super judgy. And teenagers, I remember as a teenager, I think we brought it up to, I think it was like a church function I was at or something, and we had brought up like, oh, this mother, she was like, you know, smacking her kid or something. And we were like, oh, it's so awful and all of these things. And the leader at the group, he said, you know, it's one thing for you to say what you're not going to do. But if you haven't thought about what you're going to do instead, then when you get to that moment in your life, you're going to default back to what you know. Right? You're going to default back to this all you know, because you never went the next step. So I can tell myself these are old beliefs. Those aren't true. Those are things that you've just believed because of X, Y, Z. But if I haven't gone back and decided what I'm going to think about instead of those thoughts, then when that moment comes, I'm going to default back to that. So hopefully that kind of helps explain with his subconscious. Because that was huge for me. So Jim Rohn, love this. I think we've probably said this quote a million times, but Jim Rohn says, success is not to be pursued. It's to be attracted by who you become. And that goes for anything, any version of success. It doesn't have to just be in a business or a career or something. Any version of success is going to be attracted by who you become. So we need to focus on being that person in order to have and do what that person does, right? So it's going to come to us, those things that we want. So if, you want to be a morning person or there's some morning thing, then you need to become the morning person first. And then the success that morning person has comes to them, right? I don't know if that was the best explanation, but be, do, have. We've talked about that one a lot. So if that's a new concept, go back many weeks and you'll start learning like this amazing thing. We think we have to get something first to be the person we want to be, but a lot of times we actually start by being that person and we'll get the things that person would get. So another example I had on here was when I was young again and super hipster before hipster was hipster, because that's how cool I was. I used to I was working on self-development, kind of learning all these things as well, surprise. And I remember I wanted to be like not the typical person at a party who said, what do you do for a living, right? Because back when we were super cool, everyone was like, I'm a human, right? Those are the cool ways to respond because you're enlightened. So when someone would call, because we used phones back then and we like spoke with our voices to each other, I know, super crazy. And someone was like, hey, Tanya, how you been? And I would say, just becoming who I am, because I was super cool. But the truth is that's so true, right? I mean, I was kind of onto something there. It is so true, because every decision, every experience, everything we do makes us who we are, right? And continually does so. So like every day I am becoming who I am, right? So I was someone yesterday, but as I continue to experience life, I have now become who I am now. And as I go through something today and realizations or experiences I have, I will become who I am tomorrow, right? And I think there's even an Alice in Wonderland quote, like, oh, I can't go back to yesterday because I was a different person back then, right? Like it's that quick. And I love that, because it is so true. Besides me being super cool, it really is true. Like every day we're becoming who we are. Now, Benjamin Hardy mentioned a couple of lessons back. He said, so a lot of people, I think there's a study or some evidence out there that says most people like 35 or 40 actually become frozen. It might be in the frozen personality lesson that we had. This was quite a ways back, so you can check that out. But he says most people stop at around 35 and 40. And the reason being is because they stop learning new things, right? They kind of just like their choices stay the same, their experiences stay the same, their decisions stay the same. They're not like inviting in a lot of mind-opening things and experiences that they're normally doing. So it just starts to kind of get stagnant, and you just kind of do get stuck with that is who you are. So if you're not inviting those new things, if you're not in something like this where you're actively inviting new information and actively pursuing change, then you won't go any further. But when you are, that is where every day we are becoming who we are, right? Is that like, I was so ahead of my time. No, I probably didn't make that up. I'm sure I found it somewhere. I was like, I'm totally going to do that because I'm going to be super cool. So, but the choice is ours. The choice is ours to be stuck and live that life. And as most people can see if you're on this path, is that is what's accepted by the majority, right? That's what we all kind of look around and go, well, that's what everyone does. Like, that's normal. Like, you get to this place of arrival. I've arrived. I'm here where I am in my life. I have my career. I have my home. I have my thing, whatever version of that is. And then you just kind of stop, because that's what we think is supposed to be the thing. So yeah. Choice is ours. If you're here, it's probably that your choice is a little different than that. So that is really the lesson. The lesson is really that looking forward, we're about to get into some really big change and transformation. We have been laying the foundation. We've been providing the path. Google Maps has come in, at Street View, and they've mapped it out, right? Like, it's there. Now it's time for us to like look up the directions and move our butt and get on the way. All right. So get excited about the next couple months. It should be super awesome. We do have some required reading. So this month, if you're sticking along with this, then do read Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself by Joe Dispenza. So Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself by Joe Dispenza. Just getting started on that. So check that out. And then our next month, if you're a fast reader or just want to get a jump ahead, or you like 2 books a time, or you're just, whatever your deal is, the next month is Letting Go by Dr. David Hawkins. All right, so Letting Go by Dr. David Hawkins. This month, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, Joe Dispenza, and Letting Go by Dr. David Hawkins. All right, so you're also we're encouraged to continue that weekly tracking. So again, if you've been doing compound effect, totally makes sense that you continue that tracking and you've seen the benefits of that. And do your weekly summaries. So those of you in the tag along group, definitely keep those weekly summaries going. And we're going to look into monthly summaries. And it's just a new habit. It's a reviving that old habit. So we're going to keep going with those. All right. We've learned a lot. So let's make it happen. Let's be awesome. Remember, this is about living a life by design and not by default. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did and you got something from this lesson, click that subscribe button and you'll get notified when the next one is up. And if you do want to take these, if you're an entrepreneur, solopreneur, mompreneur, whatever type of preneur that you are, and you're like, man, this is great stuff. I'm trying to build a business. I want to see how to take these same principles and a lot of others and learn how to do that. Well, then come join us at Tanya MFK on Facebook and Instagram. That is all we're about. We do all of this great stuff and self-development, but we're also about building a business and really, creating the life that we want in both business and our personal lives. Okay. So check that out, Tanya MFK. You guys have a wonderful week and I'll see you next time. Bye.